What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Face Off Sports Network. I'm Anthony Servino, bringing you three of my top must-draft fantasy football sleepers at the running back position. These guys are going to wake up in 2024. Now, what is a sleeper? A sleeper could be anything. I believe a sleeper is a player going well below where he should be in terms of ADP. These sleepers, you can get all past pick number 100 using underdog best ball ADP. Right now, we're going to start with Brian Robinson. And Brian Robinson, we know who he is, right? Last year, RB21 in PPR, RB22 in fantasy points per game, 13.2 fantasy points per game, playing in all 15 seasons. 178 attempts, 733 yards, 4.1 yards per carry. He also hauled in 36 receptions for 367 and 9 total touchdowns. So why is Brian Robinson the sleeper? Because, oh, by the way, if you look at the metrics, he was the number one running back when it comes to yards per reception, number 5 running back in terms of yards per route run. He had a lot of good things going for him. Number 7 yards created per touch. This is a good running back. So why is he going at an ADP of 111.2 right now? This is a Commanders team that's going to be better this year, we believe, with Jaden Daniels, with Cliff Kingsbury. The offense overall has some pretty good pieces, and now we add in what we believe is a really good quarterback, and we know Cliff Kingsbury, say what you will of his head coaching duties in Arizona, we know he can call an offense. This is a team that also brought in Austin Ekeler. And we know Austin Ekeler, what does he do really well? Well, he catches passes well. I just went over that Brian Robinson, when it comes to yards per reception, he was the best in the NFL at the running back position. So what I see people doing, you're either buying into Robinson or you're buying into Ekeler. I believe Austin Ekeler, and I get he was banged up last year. If you look at his sample of work, he is a player that is trending in the wrong direction. Like I get, like, Kelsey dealt with an injury, but we saw him at the end of the season and in the playoffs perform at an elite level, which is why I think he returns to elite fantasy production. Ekeler, not so much. He never really looked the same. I remember a lot of games last year, he was even dropping passes, something that is not normal for Austin Ekeler. So Ekeler and B-Rob, they're going really close in terms of price point, but the guy I'm buying into is Brian Robinson. He's the better running back today. He is the better in between the tackles running back today, which was never really Ekeler's strong suit anyway. Now, Ekeler is probably going to cut into some of those pass-catching opportunities for Brian Robinson, but Robinson could, should, and I believe will command most of the early down work and the goal line work in this offense. Now, how much running are we going to see? We know Cliff Kingsbury, his MO is the air raid offense. I don't think he's all of a sudden going to go to an air rush offense, which is not a real thing. I'm making a joke here. But I still think there's going to be enough opportunities for Brian Robinson to not only produce for his fantasy managers, but outperform his 111 ADP. So he's a sleeper, and he's somebody I'm leaving a lot of drafts with, especially drafts in which I am targeting wide receivers early. Maybe I'm targeting that Mahomes Kelsey stack in rounds 3 and 4. Leaves me a little bit vulnerable at running back. Brian Robinson is somebody I want to leave drafts with. Let's go to my next guy, and Chase Brown. This is another backfield. Who the hell do we want in this backfield? So let's start with Zach Moss. Zach Moss comes in on a free agent deal. If you look at the deal he signed, he's roughly $3 million a year. That's kind of backup running back money. And yes, people, recency bias, they put on their cap and they're like, oh, Zach Moss with the Colts, he looked phenomenal. He was better than Jonathan Taylor. Wrong. For a good run, Zach Moss was a nice running back, was winning fantasy football weeks, even helped people to the playoffs. But Zach Moss did begin to regress as the season went on. let's scale back. Zach Moss had a body of work. It's not like he was a rookie last year. So in his time with the Buffalo Bills, Zach Moss wasn't a good running back. In fact, the Bills really needed running backs, and they let Zach Moss go. They did that for a reason. Let's go to another talking point I want to bring up, and it is the fact that Zach Moss ran really well behind a really good run blocking offensive line in Indy. The Cincinnati offensive line is a significant downgrade. So I see Zach Moss. Yeah, he'll probably get 8 to 10 touches a game. But when it's all said and done, I believe the running back you want for your fantasy football teams is Chase Brown. Brown averaged roughly 8.8 touches per game for 53.8 total yards over the course of the final 6 weeks of the season last year. He has really good speed, 4.43. He was gaining chunks of 31, 27, 54, if you remember, and he had a limited workload. I don't know if Brown is going to emerge as the RB1 in this backfield because we still don't really know who he is as an in-between-the-tackles runner, but he is going to have a role. Remember, the vacated running back position of Joe Mixon, that was an every down role, and Joe Mixon was also an excellent receiver out of the backfield. I believe those opportunities are going to go to Chase Brown, and Chase Brown is an excellent pass catcher out of the backfield. With his speed and his size, people want to throw out poor man's version of Devin Achane. I don't know if I go that far because Achane, I believe, is just a super special type of talent. But I think Chase Brown's a really nice running back, and look at the situation he's going to. If this Joe Burrow-led offense and Higgins and Chase, if they're all healthy, and this offense is firing on all cylinders, there's going to be open running lanes for Chase Brown. They're going to be open passing lanes when these speedy wideouts, they take the defenders downfield and Chase Brown gets a screen or he runs a route and he has open space, which he's really good at. Last year, Chase Brown, 5.8 yards per touch. That's phenomenal. That's a phenomenal rate. I get it. Limited workload, but that's all we have to work with. I'm buying into Chase Brown. Look at his ADP right now, 121. That's a dart throw to me, right? Like double-digit rounds. You want to take a shot in a guy who could potentially emerge as a team's number one running back. Like I said, I still think it'll be Moss just because he's the early down guy. But it doesn't mean Chase Brown isn't going to outperform him in fantasy. Chase Brown, another running back sleeper, I absolutely positively love. Let's go to my final one, Ezekiel Elliott. Folks, at this juncture of life and the world and his career, Ezekiel Elliott is a fantasy football sleeper. ADP 129.6. Wow. Zeke returns to Dallas, and you can make the case he might be the best running back on that team, and that is not saying much. I get they still have Rico Dowdle. They have some guys there, people like Deuce Vaughn. But where Dallas struggled last season, what hurt them the most, they had one of the best offenses of football. What hurt this team the most was Tony Pollard, and the fact that Tony Pollard could not take the every down back wear and tear. When Tony Pollard was at his best, Zeke was getting beat up early. Tony Pollard was getting his touches and being super effective with it because the defense was tired. And when he was taking the beating, he was not as effective. Also, Tony Pollard, not a very good short yardage guy, not good on the goal line. Go look at his red zone opportunities and goal line opportunities and how many touchdowns scored. You'll see Tony Pollard was not very good at all. Zeke, what does he do best? Well, 3.5 yards per carry, career low. Dallas didn't sign him to be the old Zeke where he was getting 4.5 plus yards per carry. Dallas signed Zeke to move the chains, to pick up some chunk plays, and most importantly, score touchdowns on the goal line where, once again, Dallas struggled mightily to do so last season. Zeke is also a really good receiver out of the backfield. Now, I get it. It was out of necessity because New England's offense was really bad. It didn't have a lot of good pass catchers, but Zeke had 51 receptions, only 313 yards. So he was like catching and falling like old school Jason Witten. Towards the end of his career. But in PPR, that's valuable. So and even earlier in his career, Zeke had a couple of seasons, 47, 52, 54, 77 receptions in Dallas. So we know he has that rapport with Dak. So even though we're not getting efficient Zeke, we're getting Zeke who can help you out in PPR leagues, which raises his floor. He will be scoring touchdowns, folks. His last 2 years in Dallas, remember, people are saying Zeke was regressing and Pollard should have been the guy since 2021. But in those years when he was sharing a backfield with Pollard, 2021, 12 total touchdowns, 2022, 12 total touchdowns. This is a Cowboys offense that is going to be inside the 5 and in the red zone a lot. Who's going to benefit off that? It's going to be Ezekiel Elliott. I hate chasing touchdowns in fantasy football. It's a really bad idea. But it's a really bad idea to chase touchdowns in rounds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're getting Zeke, like I said, pick 129, double-digit rounds for teams like Dallas. That offense is probably number 1 running back. I'll chase those damn touchdowns. Look at guys in the past. Remember when Damian Harris, plotter, scored a whole lot of touchdowns for New England? How about Jamal Williams with that offense and that offensive line in Detroit? Scored a whole lot of touchdowns. He leaves, obviously does not do well in New Orleans, which we told you. But like, this is what we can potentially get out of Zeke. I'm not going to say Zeke can score 18, but in my heart of hearts, will I place a bet on the over of his touchdown total of season-long player props? Absolutely. Do I think Zeke can get 10 touchdowns this year? Absolutely. And I'll absolutely positively pay his price and possibly even reach a round to get Ezekiel Elliott on my fantasy football teams. That's all we're going to do today, folks. We're going to be live a lot answering your questions. We're dropping content like this. I absolutely love this time of the year. I love producing content and helping you all win bets in fantasy football leagues. I'm Anthony Servino. This is a Face Off Sports Network. We'll see you later.